Gorr the God Butcher promises to be the next big headache for Thor in Thor Love and Thunder, but just how powerful is the new villain? I mean, if you're a God Butcher, chances are you can butcher other things besides gods, right? Well, today I want to discuss all the characters that Gorr the God Butcher could feasibly beat in a fight. Could Gorr beat Thor? Or Loki? Or Venom? Well, I guess it all depends on Gorr's weapon, right? Well, there's a lot to discuss today, so let's get started right now. So, to understand Gorr as a warrior, it's important to know where his power comes from.
Don't you want to know what I do?
In the comics, on his own, Gorr is a bit of a weakling. He was born on some random planet and lived among a species that just never had enough to eat. Throughout his whole life, he was told to believe and trust in the gods, but that didn't work out for him too well. His parents died at a young age, his pregnant wife perished in an earthquake, and then his other children starved. It broke Gorr and shook his belief in gods. Well, one day, Gorr happened to stumble upon two gods battling it out, one of them being Knull, the creator of the symbiotes. Knull was defeated, and the god's sword, known as the All Black, aka the very first symbiote, basically fused with Gorr, giving him a powerful weapon and tremendous abilities. With this power, he was able to become strong enough to battle and slay countless gods and prove to be more than a match for Thor. I think given the complicated nature of the symbiotes and the separation of the MCU with the Sonyverse, it's safe to assume that Knull and his all-black sword won't be making an appearance in Thor Love and Thunder. If I had to guess, it's going to be another god with another all-powerful weapon that Gorr is going to stumble across and use in his quest to butcher all the gods in the universe.
Absolutely, I'm 100% with you.
Maybe they'll call it the All Black and it just won't be a symbiote? Time will tell. Anyways, with all that said, will Gorr be able to beat Thor? I say yes, but with a stipulation. Because, and I don't think this is a spoiler, Thor will not physically lose to Gorr at the end of the movie. Sure, there might be a beginning battle where Gorr gets the upper hand, but I think by the time the third act rolls around, Thor will best Gorr once and for all. I mean, it's a Thor movie after all. But that doesn't mean that Gorr still can't beat Thor in the long run. Man, side note, whoever called them Gorr and Thor specifically wanted to screw up CBR floating voices. Anyways, in the comics, there's an arc where Thor becomes unworthy of Mjolnir simply because he's told by Nick Fury that Gorr the God Butcher was right. Gorr thinks that no god is worthy, and that's why he wants to butcher them all. So even if Gorr is physically beaten by the end of Thor Love and Thunder, I still think his lasting impact could completely change Thor's mindset, and I count that as a win. Loki is the god of mischief and has proven that he knows how to survive in almost any situation. I mean, he'll either fake his own demise or be so charismatic that the one above all of the MCU will decide to make a whole Disney Plus show about the character after we just saw him choked out by the Mad Titan. Yeah, then they went and made Loki one of the most important characters in this growing multiverse saga. Boss move right there. Anyways, although Loki has proven he's more than capable of surviving when necessary, I don't think he'd stand a chance against Gorr. Gorr the God Butcher is just this force of pure hatred. He wants to, above all else, butcher every god he can find. Loki does most of his fighting with his words. Instead of a brute attack, Loki likes to gain someone's trust in order to stab them in the back. Yeah, I don't think that would work on Gorr. Any attempt to sweet talk the God Butcher would fall on deaf ears, and Gorr would attack without considering whatever Loki is trying to offer. And yes, while Loki has been known to throw some punches and stab people with his little knives, that just wouldn't be enough to take out whatever powerful weapon Gorr is working with. Jane Foster is back, and all I've been able to do is sit and stare at her incredible superhero transformation. It seems like anyone who wants to play a version of Thor needs to have arms like tree trunks. Wowza. Anyways, Jane Foster will become the Mighty Thor in this film, and will have a reconstructed version of Mjolnir at her side. But I think realistically, Gorr would be able to beat her. If you think about it, Gorr has probably been on his quest to butcher gods for a while now, and has been getting pretty good at it. Thor Love and Thunder might see Jane still a little new to this whole superhero thing, and in this case, experience probably trumps strength. Yes, Mighty Thor might be stronger than Gorr, but it also matters how you use the strength you have. Also, though I think this would be a good fight, you have to wonder if Gorr would even care about Jane Foster. Gorr wants every god's head on his mantle, and Jane is a human who is given the power of a god. Oh, I see what they're doing. Both of them will be two sides of the same coin. Both will be granted power of gods thanks to a shiny new weapon, and one of them will fight for good, the other will fight for evil. Oh, that's gonna be fun. So the question becomes, is a reforged Mjolnir stronger or weaker than the All Black? Comic-wise, I think the All Black wins. It's kind of funny how many problems can be traced back to Odin. When we first met the King of Asgard, he's sort of this kind of old man who sure will snarl at random times, but you get the idea that he's a good leader. But the more we learn about him, the more skeletons he has in his closet. Turns out he was a brutal dictator who united the 9 realms through conquest and bloodshed. So as it stands right now, in modern times, I think Gorr would easily beat Old Man Odin. Throughout his Thor movie appearances, it's clear that Odin is powerful yet easily subdued. He's not as strong as he once was. And if Odin didn't disappear in some peaceful Odin Force dust, then Gorr would probably make a beeline for Earth in order to dispatch the King of Asgard. But do you think Gorr could beat old school Odin? That one is tougher to decide, but given how they love to make things Odin's fault, I could see Gorr's backstory being tweaked by having him come across the weapon of a god that Odin himself defeated. That would be a fun connection, right? Sure, Gorr is a Thor villain and seems like he'll mainly deal with Asgardians and Greek gods in Thor Love and Thunder, but him being an overall god butcher certainly opens up other possibilities for different gods to suffer his wrath. In fact, Marvel Phase 4 just introduced another god recently, the Egyptian deity known as Khonshu. Khonshu is the god of the moon who wants his brand of justice fulfilled, and he'll usually use some weak-minded sap to do his bidding for him. But how would Khonshu handle himself in a fight? Well, just because he likes to use Jake Lockley to execute people doesn't mean he can't hold his own. Khonshu is super strong, fast, immortal, and is seemingly able to control any object that's made from moon rocks. But given all that, even though both are individuals with a burning hate in their heart, I do think Gorr's conviction of killing gods is more powerful. There's one more big god that we know of in the MCU that might be on Gorr's chopping block. Bast is the Panther goddess who the people of Wakanda worship and grants certain individuals the power of the Black Panther. But there's still a lot we don't know about Bast personality-wise, and I hope that changes in the future. You think she's fun at parties? You think she likes The Last Jedi or hates it? See, these are the questions I want answered. I don't think there would be any bigger way in showing that Gorr the God Butcher is powerful than by having him attack and wound Bast. That would show he means business. Not only would Gorr come out looking scary powerful, but it would highlight why gods like Bast would want human avatars like the Black Panther in order to fight for them. The whole god aspect of the MCU is something that's being explored more so in Phase 4, and Gorr as a villain has the potential to reveal every different type of god that currently exists in the MCU. The latest promotional image with Valkyrie and the Mighty Thor sitting down at some sort of meeting might actually be a council of gods, where they can all interact with each other. That's fun, right? Okay, enough with actual gods for a bit, let's talk about some heroes. As cool as it would be to see Gorr the God Butcher go on a god spree, chances are he's just going to do battle with the characters in the Thor universe. That brings me to Valkyrie. Now, Valkyrie will be in an interesting position in Thor Love and Thunder. The last thing we saw was how Thor relinquished his title as king and made Valkyrie the queen of the Asgardian people here on Earth. Now, you could have it so Gorr comes knocking to wipe out all the Asgardians because he hates the Asgardian people, but honestly, I hope not. The Asgardians have been through a lot, so that's why I'm hoping Gorr leaves New Asgard alone. Hopefully, Gorr just turns his attention to other gods in the universe, and Valkyrie decides to help alongside Thor and the Mighty Thor because they're besties. Is it likely? No, but hey, I just want peace for New Asgard. Alright, so in one corner you have Gorr the God Butcher, and in the other you have one of the most powerful duos in the MCU, Korg and Miek. Wait, okay, hear me out. Korg is an almost indestructible rock monster who may sound like a lighthearted fun guy, but is actually a champion gladiator. He survived on Sakaar for a long time, and that's not easy to do. And then Miek seems practically indestructible. You step on him, you think he's gone forever, but then he pops back up fresh as a daisy. And I think he's got a new exoskeleton in this film? Watch out, Gorr. Okay, fine. Gorr would completely decimate Korg and Miek, so we just gotta hope the two lovable Thor sidekicks are never alone with Gorr when Thor isn't around. How would Gorr fare against Venom? Unfortunately, we'll probably never see that fight, but it would be cool to envision, right? I mean, they do share a pretty strong connection. As I mentioned before, the comic weapon that Gorr wields is the All Black, a powerful sword that's literally made from the first symbiote and belongs to the evil Knull. It's a complicated weapon to be sure. Knull used it to decapitate a Celestial, and from there the sword was tethered to the Celestial's corpse, which granted it unnatural power. Venom is strong, sure, but he wouldn't be able to stand much of a chance here. It's just way out of his league. The only chance Venom would have would be to separate Gorr from the all-black sword and then deal with his mortal form. But you know that with symbiotes, that's a lot easier said than done. It's a shame that we can't work out the whole symbiote aspect of the MCU, because crafting a story around Gorr, Venom, and Knull would be fascinating. We know that we'll see Zeus in the MCU, played by Russell Crowe in Thor: Love and Thunder, which tells us that the Greek gods are going to play a big part in the upcoming movie, and hopefully they aren't just around to get slaughtered. Zeus logically should be the hardest god for Gorr to beat. As the leader of the Greek gods, Zeus is one of the most powerful beings in existence and probably could rival Odin. The question is though, is Zeus old like Odin or still in the prime of his life? That would be a big factor in whether Gorr could just destroy the lightning bolt throwing deity. But if we're getting Zeus, does that mean we're getting Hercules? There might be a complicated rights issue involved with the Hercules character, so the MCU may not be allowed to incorporate him, but I hope that's not the case. Hercules has always been a great foil for Thor, and because the two are so evenly matched, imagine how much Thor's morale would crumble if Gorr wiped out both Zeus and Hercules on his rampage. I've talked about Khonshu and how he's someone that Gorr would probably definitely want to decapitate if given the chance, and I mentioned how Khonshu is incredibly powerful on his own, but in that situation, I can't see Khonshu wanting to get his hands dirty. Did you see him in the Moon Knight finale? Khonshu came out of his stone imprisonment with a new lease on life. He traded his worn down robes and took a page out of Stephen Grant's book and started dressing more dapper. He's in a white suit now and drives around in a nice white limo. You think a god like that wants to fight someone named Gorr the God Butcher? No, of course not. Khonshu would get his fist of vengeance to fight for him, pitting Moon Knight against Gorr. But does Moon Knight stand a chance? Well, no. With his special weapon, I think Gorr trumps anything Moon Knight would be able to throw at the God Butcher. Like, we've seen in the Moon Knight show how even though bullets don't work against the hero, he can still be impaled by normal humans. And given that Gorr tends to use a sword, I don't like Moon Knight's odds here. Like, sure, Khonshu can keep resurrecting Mark Spector or Jake Lockley or whoever, but that just means that Gorr can cut him down over and over again. Well, let's continue that thread a bit. So if Moon Knight fighting for Khonshu wouldn't stand a chance, would Black Panther fighting for Bast be any different? I don't think so. Black Panther would have just as much trouble with Gorr than Moon Knight would, but at least it would be a different sort of fight. Sorry to say this, but if T'Challa fought Gorr, he probably wouldn't stand that much of a chance. You know, unless they go the what-if route and show that Gorr just needs a calm talking to in order to turn good, like Thanos did in the What If T'Challa Was Star-Lord episode. But Shuri as Black Panther might be interesting. Shuri has been shown to be one of the smartest minds on Earth and always inventing new gadgets and gear. If anyone could invent a device that could separate Gorr from whatever powerful sword that's infused with his body, it would probably be Shuri. But I do think that's still a long shot. Sorry, Bast, I think your Black Panther wouldn't fare too well here. Now this would be a great fight. The Eternals are basically gods worshipped by humanity throughout history, so I think they would still make Gorr's list. I mean, probably not at the top of the list or anything, but more like near the bottom. Like, I'm sure Gorr sat down and wrote out all the top choices first in his butchering list, and near the bottom he thought, hey, yeah, the Eternals counts. If I get around to it, maybe I'll pay them a visit. And if Gorr is going to be strong enough to battle Thor and Mighty Thor, then I think the Eternals would be in trouble here. Like, he would easily eliminate Sprite, Buff Kingo, Phastos, and probably Druig first. I could see a situation where Druig tries to control Gorr's mind, but is too twisted by hate and determination to be controlled. Thena and Makari would probably give the best physical fight, but I'll still give it to Gorr here. And then it depends on whether Cersei has fully mastered her powers yet. Though, if she can turn a Celestial into a rock, then I think she could handle Gorr, but she's the only one. Thanos wasn't a god, but I'm sure he thought of himself as one at the end. And hey, look at all those people writing Thanos was right on public bathroom stalls, as well as the baddies from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and you'll find people who probably worship Thanos a little bit. And if that's the case, then it wouldn't be long before you get a visit from Gorr. I know Thanos isn't a hero, but thought he would be fun to put on here. Thanos, without using the stones, was able to stand toe-to-toe with the Hulk, so we know he's physically imposing. Would that be enough to beat Gorr? Probably not. I think Thanos would need an Infinity Stone or two in order to fully combat Gorr and his all-black weapon. Without it, Thanos is just a strong dude who likes to punch things. And we've seen how easily sharp things get impaled in his chest. The all-black in Thor Love and Thunder needs to be comparable to Stormbreaker if the fight is going to be fair, and if it is, then Thanos wouldn't stand a chance against Gorr. Okay, last one, Iron Man versus Gorr. Tony Stark probably thought of himself as a god sometimes with his arrogance and his ego, so that sort of fits Gorr's MO. I think the thing that gives Iron Man a bit of an advantage here is his use of long-range weapons. Mostly every other hero I've mentioned here needs to be in close proximity in order to attack, which makes them vulnerable to Gorr's sword. But Iron Man can keep his distance and just shoot huge laser beams if he wanted. And although that would help Iron Man a bit, Gorr is supposed to be able to manipulate dark matter and use that as long-range attacks against people, so I don't think it would help Tony for long. And as long as Gorr has one opening, then he'd probably cut Iron Man into pieces. This list was mainly heroes, but how do you think Gorr stacks up against previous Thor villains? I mean, Malekith the Dark Elf would easily be destroyed by Gorr, but do you think Hela would stand a good chance against him? That would be a fun fight. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching CBR.